Hi, Year 4. Sorry about the delay yesterday. I thought maybe Sophie and the BFG got lost in London. Actually, it was something computer based, something about compressing a file. But, anyways, it took forever. So, I'm doing our chapter a little bit earlier today, so hopefully it'll be bang on time for the end of your school day. And this chapter is called The Palace. By gumdrops, whispered the big friendly giant. Is this really it? There's the palace, Sophie whispered back. Not more than 100 yards away, through the tall trees in the garden, across the mown lawns and the tidy flower beds, the massive shape of the palace itself loomed through the darkness. It was made of whitish stone. The sheer size of it staggered the BFG. But this place is having 100 bedrooms at least, he said. Easily, I should think, Sophie whispered. Well, then I is boggled, the BFG said. How is I possibly finding the one where the Queen is sleeping? Let's go a bit closer and have a look, Sophie whispered. The BFG glided forward amongst the trees. Suddenly he stopped dead. The great ear in which Sophie was sitting began to swivel round. Hey, Sophie whispered, you're going to tip me out. Shh, shh, the BFG whispered back. I is hearing something. He stopped behind a clump of bushes. He waited. The ear was still swinging this way and that. Sophie had to hang on tight to the side of it to save herself from tumbling out. The BFG pointed through the gap in the bushes, and there, not more than 50 yards away, she saw a man paddling softly across the lawn. He had a guard dog with him on a leash. The BFG stayed as still as stone. So did Sophie. The man and the dog walked on and disappeared into the darkness. You was telling me they is having no soldiers in the back garden, the BFG whispered. He wasn't a soldier, Sophie whispered. He was some sort of watchman. We'll have to be careful. I is not too worried, the BFG said. These waxy big ears of mine is picking up even the noise of a man breathing on the other side of this garden. How much longer before it starts to get light? Sophie whispered. Very short, the BFG said. We must go pell-mell for leather now. He glided forward through the vast garden, and once again Sophie noticed how he seemed to melt into the shadows wherever he went. His feet made no sound at all, even when he was walking on gravel. Suddenly they were right close against the black wall of the great palace. The BFG's head was level with the upper windows 1 flight up, and Sophie, sitting on his ear, had the same view. All the windows on that floor, the curtains seemed to be drawn. There were no lights showing anywhere, and in the distance they could hear the muted sound of the traffic going round Hyde Park Corner. The BFG stopped and put his other ear, the one Sophie wasn't sitting in, close to the first window. No, he whispered. What are you listening for? Sophie said. For breathing, the BFG whispered. I is able to tell if it is a man-human being or a lady by the breathin' voice. We has a man in here, snortling a bit too. He glided on, flattening his tall, thin, black-cloaked body against the side of the building. He came to the next window. He listened. No, he whispered. He moved on. This room is empty, he whispered. He listened in at several more windows, but at each one he shook his head and moved on. When he came to the window at the very centre of the palace, he listened but did not move on. Ho, ho, he whispered. We is hasn't a lady sleeping in here. Sophie felt a little quiver go running down her spine. But who? She whispered back. The BFG put a finger to his lip for silence. He reached through the window and parted the curtains ever so slightly. The orange glow from the night sky over London crept into the windows and cast a glimmer of light on its walls. It was a large room, a lovely room, a rich carpet, gilded chairs, a dressing table, a bed, and on the pillow of the bed lay the head of a sleeping woman. Sophie suddenly found herself looking at a face that she had seen on stamps and coins and newspapers all her life. For a few seconds she was speechless. Is that her? the BFG whispered. Yes, Sophie whispered back. The BFG wasted no time. First, and very carefully, he started to raise the lower half of the large window. The BFG was an expert on windows. He'd opened thousands of them over the years to blow his dreams into children's bedrooms. Some windows got stuck, some were wobbly, some creaked. He was pleased to find that the Queen's window slid upward like silk. He pushed up the lower half as far as it would go, so as to leave a place on the sill for Sophie to sit. Next, he closed the crack in the curtains. Then, with finger and thumb, he lifted Sophie out of his hair and placed her on the window ledge, with her legs dangling just inside the room, but behind the curtain. Now don't you go tip-toppling backwards, the BFG whispered. You must always be holding on tight with both hands to the inside of the window-sill. Sophie did as he said. It was summertime in London, and the night was not cold, but do not forget that Sophie was wearing only her thin nightie. She would have given anything for a dressing gown, not just to keep her warm, but to hide the whiteness of her nightie from the watchful eye of the garden below. The BFG was taking a glass jar from the pocket of his cloak. He unscrewed the lid. Now, very cautiously, he poured the precious dream into the wide end of the trumpet. He steered the trumpet through the curtains, far into the room, aiming it to the place where he knew that the bed would be. Pardon me. He took a deep breath. He puffed out his cheeks and he blew. Now he was withdrawing the trumpet, sliding it out very carefully like a thermometer. Is you all right sitting there? He whispered. Yes, Sophie murmured. She was quite terrified, but determined not to show it. She looked down over her shoulder. The ground seemed a mile away. It would have been a nasty drop. How long will the dream take to work? Sophie whispered. Some has taken an hour, the BFG whispered. Some is quicker, some slower still. But it will find her in the end. Sophie said nothing. I is going off to wait in the garden, the BFG whispered. When you is wanting me, just call out my name, and I is coming very quick. Will you hear me? Sophie whispered. You is forgetting these, the BFG whispered, smiling and pointing to his great ears. Goodbye, Sophie whispered. Suddenly and unexpectedly, the BFG leaned forward and kissed her gently on her cheek. Sophie felt like crying. When she turned to look at him, he was already gone. He had melted away into the dark garden. And there's Sophie sitting there all by herself on that windowsill, feeling terribly frightened. Our next chapter is called The Queen, and I hope that the Queen believes Sophie in the BFG, because otherwise Sophie is in big trouble. I shall see you tomorrow, Year 4. I hope that you've been able to enjoy getting a little bit more exercise, or just doing something fun inside or in your garden. Speak to you soon. Bye!